This is the Beara Peninsula, the far southwestern edge of Ireland, on a black January night, while an Atlantic storm tries to push a small camper van off the cliff road. Inside that van, a 68-year-old retired schoolteacher named Thomas lies awake in a plywood bunk he built himself. The wind rocks the whole vehicle on its springs. Rain hammers the roof like gravel. Most people his age are asleep in a warm bedroom right now. Thomas, by his own account, has never been happier in his life. But to understand why a retired teacher with a pension and grown children sleeps in a van on the edge of Europe, you have to go back 3 years to the day he did the math on his retirement and realized the numbers simply did not work. Ireland has quietly become one of the most expensive countries in Europe to keep a roof over your head. In Dublin, the average monthly rent has pushed past €2,000. Even in smaller towns in Cork, Galway, and Limerick, a modest one-bedroom apartment can swallow 12 or 1,300 euros a month. Now put that next to the Irish state pension, which pays a single retired person somewhere around 290 euros a week. For anyone who reached their 60s without owning a home outright, the arithmetic is brutal. Rent takes almost everything, and what remains has to cover heating oil, groceries, the car, and the doctor. Thousands of older Irish people are living exactly inside that squeeze right now. Some of them found a way out that would have sounded absurd to their parents. They sold what they had or handed the house keys to their adult children, and they moved into vans. Not rusty hippie buses, but carefully converted camper vans with insulation, diesel heating, solar panels on the roof, and a proper bed. Across the campgrounds and coastal car parks of Ireland, you will now find retired farmers, nurses, electricians, and teachers living full-time on wheels. The stereotype says van life belongs to 25-year-olds filming themselves doing yoga on a beach in Portugal. The reality on the Irish coast looks very different. It is a man in his 60s drinking tea from a thermos in a supermarket car park in Westport, with everything he owns parked in 9 square meters behind him. And come autumn, that man and hundreds like him will do something almost nobody expects. They will drive onto a ferry and vanish into the greenest corners of Europe. Before we follow them, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and whether you could ever imagine living this way. Now settle in, because before that ferry sails, you need to see how these people actually live, and the numbers behind this life surprise almost everyone. The first thing that strikes you inside one of these vans is how much thought has gone into so little space. A typical Irish self-build starts life as a delivery van, usually a Ford Transit, a Mercedes Sprinter, or a Fiat Ducato, like the one Thomas rode out that storm in. The walls get lined with sheep wool or foam insulation, because Irish damp will destroy anything less. A small diesel heater, about the size of a shoebox, keeps the living space warm through the night for less than €1 of fuel. 2 solar panels on the roof feed a leisure battery that runs the lights, the fridge, and the phone chargers. There is a 2-ring gas hob for cooking, a sink fed from a water tank under the bench, and in most builds, a small composting toilet hidden inside a cabinet. The bed usually sits across the back, on top of a garage space that holds tools, folding chairs, and Wellington boots. Tomas spent 11 months and around 14,000 euros converting his van in a friend's farm shed outside Tipperary. A professional conversion of the same standard would have cost him 3 or 4 times that. The daily rhythm of this life is slower than almost anything left in the modern world. Morning starts whenever the light comes through the skylight. Coffee gets made on the gas hob while the side door frames a view that changes every few days. One week it is the limestone terraces of the Burren in County Clare. The next it is the mirror flat water of Killary Fjord in Connemara. There is no commute, no landlord, and no letter from the bank. There is also no dishwasher, no long hot shower, and no spare room when the weather turns ugly. Everyone who lives this way describes the same trade. You give up comfort, and in exchange you get your time back. All of it, every single day. It sounds like a fair deal. Hold that thought, because Ireland is about to test it. The road that shapes most of these lives is the Wild Atlantic Way, a signposted coastal route that runs roughly 2,500 kilometers from the Inishowen Peninsula in Donegal all the way down to Kinsale in County Cork. It is one of the longest defined coastal driving routes on Earth, and for van dwellers it works like a slow-moving home street. They drift down it with the seasons. Spring in Donegal, where the beaches at Port Salon stretch out empty and gold. Early summer around Achill Island and the cliffs at Keem Bay. High summer in Connemara and the Burren, when the days at this latitude stretch past 10 in the evening. Then autumn along the Dingle Peninsula, driving the narrow road around Sleehead with the Blasket Islands sitting out in the swell. The famous stops hit differently when you live on the road. Tour buses reach the cliffs of Moher at 10 in the morning. A van dweller parked a few kilometers away can walk the cliff path at 6 and stand alone above a 700-foot drop while gannets patrol the updrafts, with not another human being in sight. That single experience, repeated at Doonbriste Sea Stack, at Misen Head, at the Faned Lighthouse, is a large part of what these people mean when they say they feel wealthy for the first time in their lives. And the money side deserves honest numbers, because this is where the lifestyle either works or collapses. A full-time van dweller in Ireland typically spends between 800 and 1,200 euros a month all in. Diesel is the biggest line, especially for anyone covering real distance. Insurance on a self-built camper runs somewhere between 400 and 800 euros a year, though Irish insurers have grown pickier about self-builds, and getting that first policy has become one of the genuine headaches of the lifestyle. Campsites cost 20 to 35 euros a night, so most full-timers use them sparingly, maybe once or twice a week for showers, laundry, and refilling water. The rest of the time they park free in the places experience has taught them are tolerated, which in Ireland means certain beach car parks, certain piers, and certain quiet laybys where the local attitude is live and let live. Compare that 800 euro month against 2,000 euros of Dublin rent before a single bill is paid, and the appeal stops being romantic and starts being mathematical. But Ireland, for all its beauty, is a hard country to live in on wheels. And this is where the second half of the story begins. The Irish climate delivers rain on something like 200 days a year on the west coast. Facilities for motorhomes are thin on the ground compared to the continent. There are relatively few official service points for water and waste, and a growing number of coastal car parks have installed height barriers specifically to keep campers out. So every year, usually in autumn, a quiet migration begins. Irish vans roll onto the ferry at Rosslare Europort in County Wexford or at Dublin Port, and they sail for the continent. The Rosslare to Cherbourg crossing takes around 18 hours across the Celtic Sea, and the return ticket for a van and driver typically lands somewhere between 400 and 700 euros depending on the season. On the car deck of that ferry, you can watch the migration assemble itself. Rows of Irish registered campers, most of them driven by gray-haired couples, with bicycles on the back and a year of planning behind the windscreen. 18 hours later, the ramp drops in Normandy, and it drops them into a completely different world for motorhome living. France treats travelers in vans the way Ireland treats visitors in pubs, which is to say, as welcome guests. The French system of aires, which are dedicated motorhome stopover areas, covers the entire country. Thousands of towns and villages maintain them. Many are completely free, and even the paid ones rarely cost more than 10 or 12 euros a night, with fresh water, waste disposal, and often electricity included. A village in Brittany or the Dordogne will happily host a row of camper vans beside the boulangerie, on the sensible theory that people who sleep in the village spend money in the village. For an Irish pensioner used to being moved on by height barriers and warning signs, the first week in rural France feels almost suspicious. Nobody minds that you are there. In many places, they are actually glad to see you. And here is where the pattern in the title reveals itself. Because you might expect these travelers to do what Irish holidaymakers have always done, which is drive straight south and park on a Spanish beach. Some do, but a striking number of them turn east instead and follow a green corridor across the continent. They trace the Loire Valley with its chateau standing over the river. They climb into the wooded hills of the Ardennes on the Belgian border. They follow the Mosel River through Germany, where vineyards rise in steep green walls above the water, and roll on into the Black Forest, where dense stands of spruce and fir cover the hills so thickly that from a distance they really do look black. From there, the route bends through Bavaria, past the meadows below the Alps, into Austria's lake country around Hallstatt, and for the more adventurous, down into Slovenia, where the Julian Alps hold glacial lakes like Bled and Bohinj in water so clear you can count the stones on the bottom. Ask them why they chase green landscapes instead of hot beaches, and you get answers that all circle the same idea. These are people who grew up in the greenest country in Europe. 40 Shades of Green is not a tourist slogan to them. It is the visual language of home. And there is a detail here that most visitors never learn. Ireland is only that green because of a lucky accident of ocean plumbing. The island sits as far north as Labrador in Canada, where winter freezes the sea itself. What saves Ireland is the Gulf Stream, a river of warm tropical water that crosses the entire Atlantic and wraps the island in mild, damp air. The same current delivers the mildness and the rain together. One package, impossible to separate. 40 shades of green and 200 wet days a year to pay for them. So when these travelers drive east, they are running a quiet experiment. They want to keep that landscape minus the price. The Black Forest in September gives them Irish scenery with dry roads and warm evenings. The Slovenian Alps give them Connemara with sunshine. One retired couple from Mayo put it simply. They said they were not looking for somewhere different. They were looking for home, with better weather. The economics of the European leg only strengthen the case. Diesel in France and Austria often runs cheaper than in Ireland. Groceries from a French supermarket or a German discounter cost noticeably less than the same basket in Galway. With free areas replacing paid campsites for most nights, plenty of couples report living comfortably on the continent for under €1,000 a month between the two of them, wine included. Their state pensions arrive in their Irish bank accounts regardless of which country the van is parked in. So the same income that meant scraping by in a damp rental at home now funds 6 months of slow travel through some of the most beautiful valleys in Europe. If you are enjoying this look at how ordinary people build extraordinary lives on the road, take a second and hit subscribe, because this channel follows stories like this one every week. Now back to the part of this life that the postcard views never show you, because there is a hard side to all of this, and the people living it are refreshingly honest about it. Start with the damp. In an Irish winter, condensation inside a van is a daily war. Warm breath meets cold metal, and by morning the windows are streaming and the mattress edge is wet where it touches the wall. Left unmanaged, that moisture turns to mold within weeks, and mold in a 9-square-meter home is not a small problem. Van dwellers fight it with roof vents, moisture traps, wool insulation, and the discipline of airing the van every single morning no matter the weather. Then there is the darkness. Ireland sits at 53 degrees north, and the Gulf Stream can soften the cold, but it cannot buy back the light. In late December, the sun rises after 8:30 in the morning and is gone by 4:30 in the afternoon. 16 hours of darkness in a small metal box tests anyone's mind. This, as much as the rain, is what pushes the winter migration south and east across Europe. Following the green also means following the light. Loneliness is the subject they take longest to open up about. Many of the older van dwellers on the Irish coast came to this life through loss. A marriage ended. A spouse died. The family home got sold in a separation, and starting over on a pension made a mortgage impossible. Margaret, a retired nurse from Limerick in her early 60s, moved into her van 2 years after her husband passed away. She says the first winter nearly broke her, not the cold, the silence. What saved her was something invisible to outsiders, which is the community that has grown up along these roads. Irish van dwellers run WhatsApp groups with hundreds of members. They share which piers welcome overnighters and which ones have new signs. They flag when someone has broken down outside Clifton and needs a tow. They gather in loose meetups at spots like Doolin and Dungarvan. A dozen vans in a row, folding chairs out, a fire going, and conversation until midnight between people who were strangers the day before. Several of them described these roadside friendships as closer than anything they had in 40 years of living in an estate where they barely knew the neighbors. Health is the quiet clock ticking underneath everything. A van has a high step, a small bathroom, and a bed you sometimes have to climb into. Knees and hips do not negotiate. Most of the older full-timers keep an Irish address through family for medical cards and hospital appointments, and they plan their year-around checkups the way younger travelers plan around festivals. Nearly all of them say the same thing when asked how long they will keep going. As long as the body allows. Not one of them says, as long as the money allows, which tells you something about which resource they consider scarce. There is also the legal gray zone they navigate every single night. Ireland has no general legal right to park overnight and sleep in a vehicle wherever you please. What exists instead is tolerance, unevenly spread. One coastal town will leave a tidy van undisturbed for a week. The next will have a council notice on the windscreen by morning. The unwritten code that keeps the tolerance alive is simple, and the community enforces it on itself. Arrive late, leave early, take every scrap of rubbish with you, spend money in the local shop, never ever empty a toilet anywhere but a proper disposal point. The van dwellers know that every person who breaks that code makes life harder for hundreds of others, and they police it with a seriousness that would surprise anyone who thinks of this as a lawless lifestyle. So weigh it all honestly. The damp, the darkness, the distance from a doctor, the nightly uncertainty about whether a knock will come on the window. Why do they stay out here? Why does Margaret spend her third winter following the Mosel instead of renting a warm room in Limerick? The answer that comes back, in different words from different mouths, is always about time. One man, a former electrician from Cork in his late 60s, put it in a way that is hard to forget. He said he worked for 47 years, and in all that time, he owned houses, cars, and furniture, but he never once owned a Tuesday. Now he owns every Tuesday. He wakes on the shore of Lake Bohinj in Slovenia or under the cliffs of Kerry, and the entire day belongs to him, and no bank, no boss, and no landlord can take a single hour of it back. There is a deeper current under that answer, and it explains why this movement keeps growing among people over 60 rather than fading. This generation watched the deal change halfway through their lives. They did everything they were told. They worked, they saved, they raised families, and many of them still arrived at retirement age unable to afford a secure home in their own country. The van for them is a flat refusal to be defeated by that reality. 9 square meters that nobody can raise the rent on. A front window that looks out on the 12 bends of Connemara one month and the vineyards of the Rhine the next. On paper, they have almost nothing. Parked above a beach in Donegal at sunset, with the kettle on and the Atlantic turning gold, they will tell you they have everything that matters. Back on the Beara Peninsula, spring eventually follows that January storm. Tomas is still there, or somewhere near it, moving with the weather up and down the same coast, planning the autumn ferry to Cherbourg and a slow run through the Black Forest before the light fails. The storm that rocked his van that night did not send him looking for a landlord. It reminded him, he says, that he was living inside the weather instead of watching it through double glazing, and that after 68 years, he finally felt like a participant in his own life rather than a spectator. The van was never really the point. The point was the morning after the storm, when he slid open the side door onto a washed, clean sky over Bantry Bay, made his coffee, and had absolutely nowhere he needed to be. His story, and Margaret's, and thousands of others quietly unfolding in car parks and forest clearings from Donegal to the Julian Alps, all point at the same uncomfortable question for the rest of us. They gave up almost everything we spend our lives working for, and in return, they got the one thing no one seems able to buy. If stories like this one stay with you, subscribe and turn on notifications, because next we are following the people who took this even further.